How's it going, guys? Welcome back. This is episode 4, I think, of my build series now. And this modification is purely aesthetic for me. I know the front disc guards stop rocks and mud getting in there, and possibly when you're an MX, bikes colliding with each other and bending discs. But for me, it's purely aesthetic. I love the 80s bikes. I love when the riders were wearing fluoro pink and yellow and it was all bright colors and plastics and things. And that's why I'm installing my RHK front disc guard. It's a real quick installation. You just take the front wheel off, remove one of the spacers, plug this bad boy in and put your front wheel back on. So I'm going to try and keep this install real short. So let's get into it. Alright guys, the first step is removing the front wheel. Now you need a 17mm for the axle bolt and a 10mm for the pinch bolt. And what you want to do if you've never taken your front wheel off is remove the first pinch bolts here on the disc side. Then you can remove the axle bolt, that will come out. Then you can relax the other side, the pinch bolts, and then you can knock the axle through and pull the wheel out. Super simple, so I'm just going to quickly do that now. Now, one tip you can try or use to just get the axle bolt moving initially is to put this bolt back in and then just use your hand, slap it through. That'll force the other side to come out of it. Now, if you've... Alright, so whenever I take my front wheel off, that's to change the tyre, or after I've been in the sand or in a lot of water crossings, I'll take it off to re-grease my axle. I do it a few times during the year. And that's why I'm able to push mine out with my finger. It's all nicely greased up all the time. But you'll find if you haven't greased your axle in a while, you'll be having to put a screwdriver in there and hammering it out, trying to get the axle loose. So that's a good indication that perhaps you should be greasing your axle a lot more. And that's not a sexual innuendo. Although, anyway, moving on. Alright, so as you can see, there's no actual attachments for the RHK onto the caliper or anything like that. It purely fits using the spacer. Now this is a spacer that's obviously machined to the same specs as the original. So in order to install this, you need to remove the spacer from your front wheel. Now, I don't have a special spacer removal kit or anything like that. I simply use a long screwdriver and a mallet. Now, obviously this is probably not the best way to do it, but for me it's the fastest way. So all you do is get your nice long thick flat head. You don't want something really small that's going to eat into the spacer. And just slide it down there and just give it a few nice love taps in a few opposite directions. And pop goes the weasel, and she's out. And you can have a look, you can see on the top, you know, if you're a bit scared of popping your screwdriver and giving it a knock, you can look at the top of your spacer after you've done it. I mean, like I said, you're not going full on crazy, you're just giving it a nice little love tap, and this is perfectly fine. There's no damage to it. I can reuse this again if I ever take the guard off. Alright guys, so now that I've knocked that out, what I've done off the camera that you haven't seen as well is I knocked my other spacer out, gave that a clean, gave that a re-grease as well. You might as well do it while you're here. Just simple maintenance really. So, I've got my grease, and I'm just going to quickly grease up my new RHK spacer. I've also cleaned in there a bit. I'm just going to give it a decent amount of grease around. Lovely. You're then gonna give the inside a bit of love as well. Put a little bit of grease there in the seal and around the shaft a little bit. Okay, now on closer inspection, this spacer doesn't look exactly the same as the stock. It's still the same diameter, but slightly different. And all I'm going to do now is just basically click that in. There we go. Done. And that's pretty much it. So I'm going to mount the wheel now, and we'll see how easy that is with obviously this a little bit more obstruction, trying to align the disc brake into the pads and everything. We'll see how that goes. Just aligning it in the pads. I'm trying to see what's... Okay, nothing's actually touching right now. I'm going to just spread the pads a bit. Okay, she's in. Now while that's like that, one thing I forgot to do was just to give my shaft a good clean. Okay, but you got to remember to grease your shaft too. Nobody likes going in dry. There's quite a few techniques on greasing your shaft. I think it's a personal choice really. I'll leave it at that. I usually like to use 2 hands when greasing my shaft. That's in a more hands-free sort of situation. Okay. I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to try not knock it over while I put the wheel in now, so it doesn't get covered with dust and shit again. Okay. Wow, it's pretty simple. Not as I'll be honest, I thought this disc guard was going to create quite a few issues getting it on. It's going to be real finicky, but it's actually quite simple. Okay. Nice, done. Now when installing your wheel back on the bike, there's a specific sequence or way that Husqvarna and KTM ask you to do it, and that involves tightening up the axle with the nut, which is down here. Might give that a bit of a clean first. So you tighten that on there, 35 Newton meters. You don't tighten the pinch bolts. So then you take the bike off the stand, give the suspension a real good jerk, play with the brake a bit, put it back on, and then you tighten the pinch bolts. That's the correct way. So I'm going to quickly do that now. Okay, so I'm putting the bolt back in there. Now one way I like to do it, instead of getting another spanner on the other side of the axle, is I do actually just pinch tight the pinch bolts. That doesn't sound right. Then with my trusty torque wrench, I quickly tighten this up to spec, which, like I said before, is 35 Newton meters. And then I undo the pinch bolts on the other side. So now I know that the axle itself is all torqued up and perfect. So I'm going to quickly whip the bike off and give it a few blows to the suspension, and also play with the brake a bit, make sure everything's set. Now that that's all settled, I don't have to touch that axle again. I've got my smaller torque wrench here now, set it to 15 Newton meters. I'm just going to go ahead and evenly tighten the pinch bolts. So obviously, if you tighten one, the other one's going to be completely loose. And even though you tighten the other one back up again, you've now taken a bit of pressure off the other. So it's quite a bit of a little bit of a bitch to do, to be honest. You have to go back to the other one, you'll find that it needs to be done again. Okay, there you go, guys. That's it, done and dusted. Really super quick to install. Sits there firmly. Yeah, looks nice. Looks cool. I really like it. I think it just looks super over the top, really 80s. Maybe I should spray paint it pink at some point to give the total vibe. But yeah, look, it obviously is going to stop rocks from getting in there. If somebody else smacks at your bike, it's going to offer some protection, dust and all that kind of stuff. There is some merit to it functionality wise. But for me, it's more just looks. Anyway guys, thanks for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.